Hey whales, welcome to video number 4. Let's go over the 1% risk rule, and this is probably the most important topic you'll ever hear as a trader. So what is the 1% risk rule? The 1% risk rule is that if you lose a trade, if you get stopped out on a trade, you only lose 1% of your account balance. So what does that mean? So for instance, if I have 100K, and if I get stopped out on Palantir, let's say price goes and breaks my stop loss and I lose, I only lose 1% of my 100K. So what does that equal to? $1,000. So I only lose $1,000. That is very important. The reason why we stick to the 1% risk rule is because if you stick to this, you will never blow up your account. You'll never go to zero. So how do you make sure that if price goes to your stop loss, you only lose 1%? This is where position sizing, and this is where I use Grok or ChatGPT to calculate how to do this. So for instance, if I go to Grok and I type in I am risking 1% per trade, okay? And if I look at Palantir, so Palantir entry is 114.71. So I want to enter Palantir at 147 or 114.71, 114.71. Stop loss at stop loss is 108.34, 834, right? I have a 100K account. How many shares should I buy to make sure I only lose 1% of my account balance? So I use ChatGPT or Grok to basically give me an understanding of how many shares I should buy. So basically it says that if you have a $100,000 account, you want to buy 157 shares of Palantir. Okay, so perfect. So in this trade, if I'm going to buy Palantir, I'm buying 157 shares at 114.71. Stop loss at 108.34. So hopefully that makes sense, guys, right? So I'm buying 157 shares. So 157 shares times the price of Palantir is 114.71. So 114.71. So that position sizing is $18,000. So I'm buying $18,000 worth of Palantir shares to make sure that if my stop loss gets hit, I only lose $1,000. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. That's the 1% risk rule explained. So when you're entering a trade, this is why typically you always want to have a 2-to-1 risk to reward. So what does that mean? So if you take a look at this tool, so I'm using TradingView. There's this tool called the long position. So if I click on the 114.71, this is my entry. Let's say my stop loss is right here, right at 108.85. You can see on the screen the risk to reward is 1.1 right now. You typically, want to have at least a 2-to-1 R&R like this. The reason why is because over time, if you only win 50% of your trades, you're going to still be profitable because your risk to reward is 2-to-1. So you're risking $1,000 to make $2,000. Does that make sense? So 2-to-1 R&R. You risk $1,000 to make $2,000. All right. So that's typically what I like to do. I like to have a 2-to-1 risk to reward scenario. So if there's a trade setup that allows for a 2-to-1 risk to reward, I will go into that trade most likely. So 2-to-1 R&R. Now, secondly, guys, this is typically for day trades. So I like to do 1% for day trades. Now, for swing trades, if it takes a bigger, for instance, let's go to Adobe on the weekly time frame. So for instance, for Adobe, right? Since this is a swing trade, this takes a longer time to mature. For swing trades, you can go a bit deeper, a bit bigger. So you can do 2% to 3%, even to 5% if you're really confident, but 2 to 3% risk is what I like to do. So let's do it one more time for Adobe, right? So let me go here. So Adobe entry at, let's say I want to enter at 382. I want to have a stop loss at 252, right? Underneath the green box. Stop loss at 250, something like that, right? 100K account. I want to risk 3%. How many shares should I buy? Okay, so once you do that, you're going to buy 22 shares of Adobe. So what is that? 22 shares times 382 times 382. So your position size would be $8,404. So you're going to be buying $8,400 worth of Adobe at 382 entry price. That's 22 shares. So if you lose this trade, if the price goes down, you lose $3,000, right? Because you're risking, right? We said that we were risking 3%. Where is it? Yeah. So I want to risk 3%. So you're risking 3%. So if you lose this trade, you lose $3,000. If you win this trade, because it's a 2-to-1 R&R, you're setting itself up for 2-to-1 R&R. Let's say here, you're going to win $6,000. So hopefully that makes sense, right? 2-to-1 R&R. You're going to make $6,000. You're going to lose $3,000. You're going to win $6,000. So that is basically how you compute position sizing, how you go over the 1% risk rule, and why making sure that you have a 2-to-1 R&R is important. Now, if you have TradingView, the beautiful thing about TradingView is that you don't have to use Grok. You can use this long position tool, and when you click on this setting, you can type in everything here. So I have a $100,000 account. I want to risk 3% per trade. My entry price is 382. And here we go. My stop loss, I want to do 250. So when I click OK, boom, you can see the quantity QTY is 22. So it's telling me I should buy 22 shares of Adobe. So how beautiful is that? So right on here, you just fill in what you want to do, entry price. You can move your stop loss, right? So this is dynamic. So if the stop loss moves, you can see the quantity moves. So if you want to put your stop loss higher, like this, 57 shares. So again, if you lose this trade, you lose 3K. If you win this trade now, because it's a 5-to-1 R&R, you see that risk to reward ratio, 5-to-1 R&R. So what is 5 times 3,000? 15,000. You win 15,000. So you're risking 3,000 to win 15,000. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. So yeah, keep practicing, keep learning, take your time. Again, day trades, you only want to stick to maybe 0.5 to 1% risk. Swing trades, you can go 2% to 3%, depending how comfortable you are. All right. So again, that is why it's so important to make sure you stick to your stop loss. That is why if you have a 2-to-1 R&R, even though you only win 40% of your trades, even 33% of your trades, you're still going to be profitable at the end of the day because it's 2-to-1 R&R. You're making 6,000 versus losing 3,000. So if you have a 50% win rate, guess what? You're going to make 50% over 100 trades. So always try to get at least a 2-to-1 R&R and risk 1% to 3% depending on if it's a day trade or a swing trade.